RapidScale. Just wanted to welcome you to today's technical webinar around cloud security and AlienVault. We're not going to get started just yet. We're going to wait a couple of minutes for additional attendees to join, so please hold tight. Once again, good morning or good afternoon, depending on where you are in the world. This is Dylan Bowders, Solutions Engineer with RapidScale. We're just going to wait a few more seconds for additional attendees to join, and then we'll get started with our technical webinar covering cloud security and AlienVault. All right, 2 minutes after. For those that have joined since my last announcement, this is Dylan Bowders, Senior Solutions Engineer with RapidScale. I'm based out of Raleigh, North Carolina, and cover, for the most part, the East Coast of our partner relationships, including other strategic opportunities. Today, our technical webinar is on AlienVault, which is one of the components of our cloud security portfolio. We also have AlienVault on the line with us today, and I'll introduce them here in just a moment. Just as a note, this session is being recorded, so if you want to share it or reference it after we're done with today's call, a link will go out via email so that you can gain access to that recording within 24 hours. And it's also going to be available in the partner portal. If you have any questions around access to that, please email Summer at marketing@rapidscale.net for access. If you have any questions throughout the presentation, there is a chat section. Currently, everybody is on mute so that we can get through this and answer questions at the end. If we're able to answer those throughout the webinar, we'll do that. Otherwise, we'll address those at the very end. So where does AlienVault fit in our cloud security portfolio? Through this diagram together to give you a visual of how it fits in. And if my drawing tools work, I'm going to be able to highlight some areas here. So we'll focus on AlienVault here in just a moment, but just to give you an idea of how it fits, we have mobile device management with Citrix Zen Mobile, so we can control and track and policy enforce mobile devices like cell phones and laptops. We have Imperva Encapsula, which will be a future technical webinar around web security, DDoS mitigation, web acceleration, global load balancing for web content. We have Mimecast for email security, which was our technical webinar last month, where we can enforce scrubbing of email content prior to it getting inside of our network. We also have the inherent security measures around our desktop as a service and HDX protocol with Citrix, where it's encrypted and we can contain your company's data inside of a secure environment. Which takes us down into the production environment, which is this box here. We also have the disaster recovery environment on the right side, and this is just a scenario, of course. And then a remote office, for an example. We're going to leverage Fortinet on the perimeter, which is going to enforce your typical perimeter firewall policy enforcements around incoming traffic, outgoing traffic. We can do content filtering for browser or for desktop users inside of the environment. We can do some IDS and IPS at a not rudimentary level, but not necessarily as specific as things like Mimecast and Encapsula, but being able to enforce the gateway as well as possible. But that can't really be the only security mechanism if we really want to sleep well at night and know that we're protecting the company's data. From a server level, we're going to leverage something like WebRoot. WebRoot is the antivirus, anti-malware component that we use on servers. And then today's topic, which is AlienVault, which is really gives us an idea of what's happening inside of the network. We're also going to go into detail on that. But if we think of our data and our server environment, and obviously we're talking about prospects and customers, but from a partner perspective, if we try and tell a story around, we have a house, and we want to not only enforce security, let's say it's a gated community, which is going to be our mechanisms like Zen Mobile, Encapsula, Mimecast on the perimeter of our neighborhood. We want to put in a mechanism where we have a guard and we're validating legitimate traffic coming into the neighborhood. At the perimeter of our house, we want to have a lock. We want to have potentially some kind of webcam. We want to be able to validate traffic before it comes into the house. And in most cases, that's where security stops for a lot of customers. They don't really know if there's somebody inside their house. They're obviously not sitting there looking at traffic all the time because they're not home. But they don't know if there's anybody inside the house. So we want to have webcams inside the house. We want to have motion sensors. We want to have a system hooked up so that if there's any of those triggers happen, it goes to a security operations center or 911. So that's really what AlienVault does. Is it gives us unfederated access to the traffic happening on the network, file integrity that's happening on the servers, taking events from Encapsula, from Fortinet, and aggregating those into a security information and events manager. So it really takes everything and wraps it into fantastic visibility and knowing what's happening inside the network. Turn off my drawing tools. So why did we choose AlienVault as a partner for our cloud security, unified security management and SIEM, which is one of the components? As I mentioned on our Mimecast technical webinar last week, and we'll continue to anytime we talk about customer experience, is at RapidScale we want to control that customer support experience as much as possible. But at the same time, we want to leverage industry leaders when it comes to technology. AlienVault is a Gartner-recognized product in the SIEM quadrant, for instance, but it's a bigger picture than just the security information and events manager. AlienVault also gives us the opportunity as a managed services provider to give that first level of support, to be the escalation and the triage. And if you're subscribed to our services, the remediation of incidents that may come up. So it really was a perfect match for us as a security component on the inside of the network to leverage AlienVault. And we'll go into the details of some of those different components there once we hand it off to the AlienVault team. So with that, on the phone today with us is EJ, who is our partner representative, and then Zuri, who is our engineer, who will be running the demonstration. With that, I'll go ahead and hand over the voice aspect of the webinar to EJ and Zuri. Thanks for coming on, guys.
Yep. Thank you for that, Dylan. Like Dylan mentioned, guys, I'm part of the MSSP acquisition team for AlienVault and manage our partners spread across North America at this time. And it was a great way of putting where our solution sits as well, as far as that second layer behind the perimeter sort of software for security. You definitely need that extra layer behind a firewall or endpoint security to give you that full forensics and detection capabilities. And a little bit about AlienVault. So we actually started in 2007 as an MSSP. And that's where we really differ in the market from either our competitors and some other vendors as well, because not only do we have that complete stack of security tools like Dylan mentioned, but we actually were created with what it takes to be successful as an MSSP in mind. So we started in 2007. Now we're headquartered in San Mateo, in Austin, Spain, and Ireland as well, and have over 5,000 commercial customers spread across a variety of different verticals, whether they're in government, financial, healthcare, retail. We really do cover all of those spaces with the way we deploy our architecture and the way we sort of integrate our several different technology stacks as well. More than 300 employees worldwide now. The last numbers I checked for our MSSP partners, we have about almost 400 partners now spread across the world. whether they're in Saudi Arabia, Australia, all across North and South America, of course, and Europe. We really do have a variety of partners that are really taking advantage of our complete stack of technology as well. And the only company to be named a visionary in the Gartner Swim Magic Quadrant 4 years in a row. And again, the reason why we are a visionary in the quadrant is because of that complete security stack. We don't just offer you that SIM tool, but we actually include every essential security tool you need within one platform. And if you're looking at the next slide here, so the tools that we include with the SIM, and of course with the SIM, what you're getting is a window into an infrastructure, right? It's going to give you the events and logs and let you know what's going on within the entire infrastructure. But with that being said, a SIM isn't going to give you a complete security platform. You still need to integrate other tools, especially if you're looking to target a variety of customer bases. So we actually have 30 to 35 tools that make up our unified security management platform, and that makes up these 5 pillars, right? So along with that central SIM and log management tool, we have your asset discovery tool as well. So you can know who and what is connected to your customer environments, and gives you a look of the lay of the land and where actually every unique IP address is sitting, so you can know what you're actually protecting in your environment. You're also getting a built-in vulnerability scanner. So usually companies or MSSPs would have to integrate an outside vulnerability scanner for that complete platform. We've integrated one into the system already, so you can use that for your compliance requirements, and you can know where the kinks in the armor are without any sort of limitation to how many scans you can run. Also giving you that full intrusion detection tool, so you can know where suspicious activities are happening, whether that's in your entire network, whether that's through host intrusion agents or file integrity monitoring as well. Also giving you a central behavioral monitoring tool, so we can actually identify suspicious behavior and of course be proactive rather than reactive to any malicious actors and activities. And again, this is why we are considered a visionary in our field. This is why we do really differ from a lot of the competition in the market, is because we're stacking all these security essential tools all within one single pane of glass, one dashboard, where it's easy to manage even several hundred clients at the same time. And again, these 3 areas really make up our USM product. So we really do have an all-in-one approach to threat detection, right? Our unified security management platform, giving you that SIM tool, asset discovery, vulnerability scanning, intrusion detection, and behavioral monitoring, all within one central tool and dashboard. But with AlienVault, we actually do provide threat intelligence and a fully built labs team as well. Our labs team really is second to none. We have a great group of data scientists and researchers that actually survey the threat landscape for our partners and customers as well. So we're actually delivering the latest in threat intelligence as much as every week, at most cases as much as every 30 minutes as well, to provide the latest threat intelligence on malicious actors, activities, and even changing malicious actors as well. In conjunction with our labs team, we actually have a program called the Open Threat Exchange, or OTX. It's actually very unique to AlienVault in a way that it's the world's largest repository of threat intelligence, and it's free to join. So what we've done is actually create a large network or community of security individuals that are contributing to our threat intelligence as well. The numbers from the last time I checked are over 50,000 individuals now, over 150 different countries, contributing over 10 million threat indicators daily. So that large amount of data we're using in conjunction with our labs team, and we're making sure that all of our MSSP partners, all of our customers actually have the latest threat intelligence built into their system as well. So they're always up to date on the newest or latest malicious actor and activity, and they can always stay reactive towards those goals rather than, proactive towards those goals rather than reactive to any malicious activity in the network. And with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and hand it off to Zuri Cortez. He's one of our top engineers here at AlienVault, And I'm going to go ahead and show you guys a look into our AlienVault USM Anywhere product, which can actually be deployed in a cloud environment or on-premise as well. And Zuri?
All right. So thanks, CJ, for that introduction. So yeah, what we're going to do is actually cover the USM appliance here. So hopefully you folks can see my screen here. So you should be seeing the actual demo environment for USM appliance. So what we'll cover is kind of those top points, right? The SIM, the asset discovery, the vulnerability assessment, the IDS, going through the Open Threat Exchange, talking about what makes us unique, what makes us different. So definitely kind of are going to cover those key points. Anything along the way, if you have any questions, feel free to kind of shoot those out there. We can definitely talk to those as well as we kind of go along here. So starting off with the actual dashboard here, I usually don't spend too much time on this. Really, there's kind of two big points to talk about as far as the dashboard is concerned. One, it's a pivot point. So, all these little icons you see here, coming from the SIM, coming from the alarms, the Open Threat Exchange, the assets, they're all pivot points to that corresponding set of data. So if we're talking about SIM, we can drill down to the actual SIM events, alarms, Open Threat Exchange. You can always pivot from the dashboard to its corresponding data directly from that dashboard itself. Now, the second thing here is that the dashboard itself is actually also customizable. So if we're happy with the executive view here, that's, we're content, we can definitely kind of leave it as is, or we can kind of adjust it and kind of mix and match kind of according to the specific needs that we have as far as, what we're concerned with as far as data. Now, that's really it kind of on the dashboard. We're going to start in the SIM and kind of work our way around the environment here. So with the SIM, here's kind of the unique features as far as AlienVault is concerned. There's two. First one is how we ingest data. So we'll talk about that, and also we'll talk about what the end result is that we're trying to accomplish here. So starting with the first one, there's kind of three big points of data that we ingest. There's host IDS, network IDS, and then there's syslog. So with the host IDS, what we're actually doing is deploying an OSSEC-based agent to your environment. So typically, you would deploy it to things like DC controllers, Active Directory servers, file servers, any kind of the critical core servers that are going to contain a lot of those host-based logs are going to have that actual agent deployed to it. And then from there, what you're actually going to get are kind of those host-based events, right? So your network logons, your login failures, your password resets, things like password lockouts, group policy changes, file integrity monitoring. So a lot of those kind of host-based events that are kind of associated with those logs are going to be annotated into the SIM, relayed here, so that now we have kind of clear visibility on our hosts, right? If typically the approach right now is, to get logs from my host, I have to kind of scramble and go from host to host, kind of pulling logs through Windows, auditing, that's going to expedite this whole process because now I'm just deploying agents, centralizing my logs into the SIM, and kind of being able to view my logs this way. Now, that agent creates a key exchange between the agent itself and the server. So it is an encrypted connection between the two, and it's communicating through UDP 1514. So essentially, that's the communication back and forth. Now, comparing that to the network IDS, so the network IDS is going to be done through a span port. So span port, mirror port, network tap, whatever term you use, essentially what we're doing is we're tapping into the central ingress and egress point. So if for you that's a core firewall or core switch, we'll tap into there, and then we're going to mirror the traffic passively using our sensor. And then from there, using Suricata to bring the data into the SIM, analyze it through our correlation directives, our Open Threat Exchange, we'll definitely talk about here momentarily, and then relaying the data into actual SIM to get our actual intelligence. So that's kind of how we're doing the network IDS coming in from the span itself. Now, the third point here is syslog. So as far as syslog is concerned, that's really how we're going to ingest logs coming from things like maybe your firewalls, your antivirus, kind of those syslog capable components that you have out there that, you also want to include, right? I mean, it's nice to have host IDS, it's nice to have network IDS, But if I'm still kind of going through and trying to access my web GUIs for my firewalls and going into my antivirus for that, being able to kind of centralize and consolidate everything into kind of one central platform is key here, right? So the end goal of this is to have RapidScale be essentially being able to have a central focal point of logs that are kind of contained in one central location, so that then from there they can kind of expedite the whole management of those logs. Now, what you're looking at here is the actual plugin list. So what you'll note is we're pretty vendor agnostic. We try to cover as much as out there as possible, everything from Apache logs, Apple, Aruba, Barracuda, Carbon Black, Cisco, kind of to name a few here. I think it's about a 10-page list of logs that we've got out here that we definitely support. So just to note, this is definitely something that's available. So if you go to AlienVault.com and then go to Docs, Data Sheets, USM plugins list, you'll find that actual list there. It's just a PDF. Feel free to pull it up. You'll kind of be able to take a look at the different logs that we support. So like I mentioned, ultimately what we're doing is we're creating data sources for every single type of log, centralizing them into what we call a single pane of glass view, so that now from this perspective, RapidScale as our partner can then take the logs themselves, view them quickly as a data source. So for example, let's say, someone out there has a Cisco ASA, and I want RapidScale to monitor that. Sure. So we would forward that to the AlienVault system. We've got our Cisco ASA logs here, as noted here, right? So just a very quick way to annotate logs and aggregate them in one central location. Now, let's go back to network IDS real quick. As we're looking at these threats, sure, we have the events in the SIM. We can definitely kind of look through them. We can do the analysis ourselves and kind of come to some conclusion as to kind of what's going on, right? The end goal here really is for MSSP partner RapidScale to be able to quickly identify these threats without having to take the time, right, to kind of go through and look at these logs one at a time. So how do we expedite that process? Well, what we're doing is creating an actual alarm panel that is taking those logs in and of themselves, doing the analysis, and then relaying them actual alarms listed here. So basically, we're identifying the alarms, whether they're environmental awareness, so things like indicators of compromise, vulnerable software, some sort of network anomaly or suspicious behavior, up to the full-blown, ransomware infection, your malware, your Trojan, so forth. So, for example, take kind of assume for a second that this is your environment we're looking at. What we would be seeing is, we've got some Dropbox usage, we've got some port scans going on, but, we've got an infection here. So an actual malware remote access tool, for example, here is an actual alarm. So what can I do with this alarm? Well, what we can do is simply drill down into the alarm. And we're going to understand a little bit of information here right off the bat. Number one, we are dealing with a remote access tool. So it's a dark comet-based threat. So we know what we're dealing with. We know the variant. And since it's internal, we then understand the asset. So in this case, the actual asset compromised is this Windows 10 machine here. So because the asset discovery is built into the platform, we're then able to relay the actual asset that's compromised. So it's Windows 10 machine here being the host name. Here's the IP. Here's the network it belongs to. So with this information, we should have enough to quarantine this asset, run a target scan against this remote access tool, in this case being Dark Comet. And then how we know this, I'll talk about that here in a second. But then kind of going one step further, right? Now let's say, we've done the remediation, whether it's RapidScale has done the remediation or you all have done it. Then we're going to then analyze, well, what vulnerabilities are actually on this asset? Did it have some sort of open ports? What kind of was associated to the asset itself? Well, being as the vulnerability scanner is also built in, I can simply scroll down a little bit further, and now I've got the vulnerabilities listed here. So as of right now, these are the vulnerabilities associated to this asset being listed here. Here are the open ports that are accessible. So from the post-remediation perspective, let's look at the vulnerabilities. What can we patch? What can we kind of address there? Let's look at the open ports. Do those need to be open? If they are, let's kind of work towards strengthening that access. If not, let's shut those down and kind of block that access so we're not continually, exposing ourselves that way. So with that information, usually the question that comes up here is, So day to day, kind of what's the best view that I would need to see to kind of have some intelligence? Definitely would be the alarm view. This would probably be the view that RapidScale would then have as far as their federated approach to viewing the alarms, kind of being able to proactively see the alarms and then kind of moving forward from there. Now, a way to kind of make this, take this one step further is to be able to, for example, create some notification, right? So let's say we want RapidScale to be notified via a couple of different means here. How do we do that? Well, what we can do is create tickets. So the tickets would be created for things like vulnerabilities, things like alarms. So every time one of these vulnerabilities or alarms is generated, it'll create a ticket. Now, the way to get these to, for example, RapidScale, or maybe even to get them into your actual ticketing system, what you could do is simply forward them via SMTP, so that now, whether those tickets are going to be centralized within RapidScale or they're going to be centralized within yourselves, you're expediting not just the notification because those tickets are being sent to you, but they're being consolidated in something that's familiar to you, right? If you're going to kind of be managing this yourselves, and the ticketing system is kind of important, or RapidScale is going to do it. Now we're just kind of centralizing everything that way. Now, an alternate way to do that, or something else that can be done, is to kind of also be able to do event notification through something like emails, something like SMS messaging. So, we have that functionality kind of built in to kind of be able to do things like the ticket notification, email notification, text-based notifications, kind of all built into the platform here and ready to go. So moving on from notification, I kind of promised we would talk about threat intel. So here's kind of where the bread and butter of the AlienVault system really resides. So there's kind of two factors in play here. There's correlation directives, and then there's the open threat exchange. So for those of you folks out there that are familiar with SIM, kind of have dealt with it before in the past, this is kind of a big point here, because if you're familiar with SIM, you'll probably be familiar with being able to creating directives, right? Creating from directives from scratch, having to do the research, doing the analysis, writing out the directive, testing it to make sure it works, implementing it into my SIM, but then moving forward, having to do the tuning, right? Every 3 months, maybe the threat changes somehow. So I have to be able to kind of keep up with that. So how do we alleviate that kind of pain point? Well, if you'll notice, there's this number here, over 3,700. That's how many directives we have built into the platform as of today. So what that means to you is two things. One, you don't have to write these directives out anymore, right? They're being provided with that partnership between our AlienVault Labs team, with the RapidScale team. These are being provided to you, pushed out to you automatically. So EJ mentioned on a weekly basis, typically about 3 to 4 times a week. Two, our AlienVault Labs team is actually the ones that are actually doing the tuning, right? So in conjunction with RapidScale, we're actually doing the tuning for you, so that things like WannaCry from last month, things like the Petya ransomware scan from 2 weeks ago, things like those directives are being pushed into the actual platform on a weekly basis. Brute force authentication attacks, denial of service attacks, even down to policy, right? So something like, hey, I'm curious about someone using Dropbox in my environment, or I want to know if someone's using BitTorrents in my environment. Those kind of directives are built into the platform already as is, and kind of ready to go here as far as being able to notify you as kind of what's going on within your environment. So, having these directives here, having the tuning done for you is really kind of a big ROI or kind of return on investment here as far as going with the RapidScale and AlienVault-based system. Now, the other side of that is our open threat exchange. And so I think there's really kind of 3 cool things about the open threat exchange, like EJ mentioned. One, what we do is deliver pulses. So essentially what a pulse is kind of what you're looking at here. It's talking about a specific threat. In this case, the Petya-based ransomware attack, so high-level information, references pertaining to it, so kind of some great reading information here. But more importantly, we're able to target on indicators of compromise, things like file hashes, domains, IPs, URLs, host names. So taking those into account, we're pushing this information every half hour into your platform, so that let's take for example the torrent use case. Let's say maybe someone in your company is using torrents. So there's really 2 alerts you're going to get. First, you're going to get the alert that someone's using a torrent site, right? Because of the policy that we saw earlier. 2, let's say you're accessing joestorrentsite.com. And if anyone's name out there is Joe, apologize. That's just kind of the example I gave here. But someone from within your company is using joestorrentsite.com. Now, if that is associated to, let's say, this Petya-based ransomware attack, the second alert you're going to get is one, you're getting a communication with joestorrentsite.com in this case. It's a torrent-based site, but more importantly, this actual indicator, in this case this URL, is associated to carrying the payload for a ransomware attack. So moving forward, what we then can do is engage that indicator at that level, block that URL or prevent any communication back to that URL, and effectively we're mitigating against exposing our network to a Petya-based ransomware attack if that's kind of what's associated to that actual URL. So that's kind of the indicator of compromise level and kind of how those work. The second thing here, and I'm sure, if a lot of security folk are out here, if you subscribe to maybe other threat-based threat feeds, maybe some blogs that you have out there that, there's really good information, but, right now it's just kind of reading information. There's not kind of really a way to integrate that into my platform. What we can do is actual pulse creation. So what this is actually doing is actually ingesting indicators from things like, your Stix feeds, your taxi feeds, your open IOCs, your blogs, all that interesting information that you're actually accumulating over time and you're kind of bookmarking, being able to take that data, dragging and dropping it into the extraction tool, and then creating those indicators of compromise, right? Extracting that actual data content that's relevant to you all can be done so, and then creating that pulse here is going to allow you to actually take that data and then make it actionable in your actual appliance, using the Open Threat Exchange as a transport vehicle to take that data from being just, blogs to actually being actionable intelligence that's going into your platform. So that would be done through the pulse creation here. Now, the third thing that I find kind of interesting, and I'm prior service here, I'm a former Army myself, so this is kind of one of the interesting things that I find is what I call the Hotspot View. So the Hotspot View is identifying threats that are out there throughout the world. So currently, there's kind of 32,000 threats that are out there. These are kind of the threats that are kind of worldwide that we've seen. So of course, your typical hotspots are going to be in China, of course here in the good old US of A, Europe, South America, in the Middle East. Typically, it's kind of where we're going to see a lot of those threats. Russia, of course, being the other one. So what's kind of cool about this besides seeing hotspots? Well, here's the thing. I can actually drill down right into a location and kind of take a look at actual threats near me. So EJ and I are actually here in Austin. So for the sake of time here, I'll kind of drill down into our area and kind of show you something relatively near us here. So it's kind of around the area where we're from. Actually, this one's probably closer here. So in the kind of vicinity of kind of where AlienVault resides, there's actually a known bad IP. So first, I can actually drill down into the actual location. So here's actually where the IP is. So that's the first thing. I can actually show you where it's at. Second, I can actually drill into the IP itself and actually give you some information around it, right? So it's coming from the Open Threat Exchange. So in this case, here's the actual IP. As we saw, it's in Austin. Fairly active, activity coming last time from June 25th. And in this case, it's a spamming IP. So it is associated with this domain. We do have quite a few network signatures associated to it and a couple of URLs as well. So, it's kind of a powerful tool, right? Being able to showcase not just the location, but actually, what is the IP? What is it actually doing? How active is it? Where is it located? Are you tracking any network signatures from it? Do you have any other information around it? Is it associated to other URLs? So all that's really being provided through that Open Threat Exchange and accessible to you, right? So whether, RapidScale is kind of be working through it, or maybe, you just kind of want to go in and look at the Open Threat Exchange itself, have that functionality built into the platform and ready to go there. So kind of the last three things to cover here are just asset discovery, vulnerability assessment reports. So asset discovery is done through Nmap. So it's just a typical Nmap scan, goes out, identifies assets, and then reports back on the actual asset content. So what you're getting are the actual host names, the IPs, and the operating systems. So this asset scan, like I said, it works off Nmap. So what we would first do is first associate the networks like so. So we would simply add a network, so just a name and our CIDR notation here. Alternatively, what we can do is just import a CSV, and we'd give you the format of how to do that, like so. So you can kind of do that. And then we would just kind of do our typical asset scans. Again, we could do a manual add. We can do a scan for assets or just import them through a CSV and kind of get the actual data content residing here. Now, once these assets are in place, what I can then do is go ahead and run those vulnerability scans, right? So being able to run that actual vulnerability scan against those assets would be done here. So what we're using here is the OpenVAS system. So if you folks are familiar with Nessus, what we're using is OpenVAS, which is kind of the open source version of Nessus there. And really the same rules apply, right? We can do a scan on a network like so. We can do a scan on individual assets. We can group up our assets into groups. So for example, if some of you folks are PCI compliant, I can do a PCI compliance-based scan targeting those specific assets. Same thing with NIST, HIPAA, whatever your compliance need is out there. And then we can also do the authenticated or unauthenticated scans. So depending on which one is the need here, we can also do that. Now, what does the actual report look like here? So in this case, I'll show you kind of an HTML-based report, but essentially 3 different ways we can show the data. We can show you through a HTML, a PDF, or a CSV. So if we're looking at the actual HTML data content here, here's the actual percentage breakdown. So breakdown from serious to informational, kind of pie chart format here, all the hosts that we've scanned, and now the actual report. So the key thing for the report that I find interesting is how we relay the data. So we've got the actual vulnerability name here. We've got the impact, things like the summaries, the affected operating systems, the actual solution, references, CVSS-based scoring, CVE articles, things like bug track IDs. So the goal here really is that we're not just providing, hey, you've got a vulnerability. We're providing you with additional information so that, even if, we need to delegate this down to maybe a more junior technician that maybe isn't as versed with security, but is kind of on their way, I can typically hand them this report. They should have all the data content that's necessary within the report, and kind of being able to kind of move forward and tackle those vulnerabilities based off the data content that's actually already built in the report itself. So since we're speaking on reports, the ultimate culmination of the data is then in the reporting. So with the reporting, there's kind of a couple of different things to note here. One, there's over 250 canned reports that are built into the platform. So whether we're dealing with compliance, whether we are dealing with kind of day-to-day activities, we want to know kind of, hey, RapidScale team, kind of show me what you've done or kind of what you've monitored for in the last 30 days or what have you seen today. We can do that. Now, the next thing is we can then customize those reports, right? So, let's say we were presented a report and we thought, hey, that's a decent report, but, I think, I'd like to have, X, Y, and Z. We can definitely customize the reports to kind of fit that need or just create new reports from scratch as well. So definitely kind of cater to any specific need there. Just to note, for you folks that are compliance-based, we do have the compliance-based reports in here. So if we're talking about things like PCI, that's in there. Your HIPAA-based compliance reports, those are in there. Things like your ISO, that's also in there. NIST, another common one that is also in there as well. The NIST report. So being able to have those kind of compliance reports built in is going to be key here to actually be able to kind of showcase. Now, to give you kind of a sampling of what the reports actually look like. So let's take, for example, an alarm report. I just want to know in the last 30 days or maybe in the last day, what have you seen as far as threats? Well, what I can do is run an actual alarm report. And as of today, so this is kind of a report as of today, what we've seen, and these are the top 10 attackers that we've seen so far. Here have been my top 10 attackers, whether they were internal or external. Here are my top 10 destination ports that were attacked. Here are my top 15 alarms that I've seen thus far. Here are my alarms by risk. So if I'm doing risk analysis, that's available. No password changes were done today, but we do have some authentication account lockouts. So really the end goal of the report is to be able to present an actionable report depending on, regardless of who we're dealing with, right? If we're dealing with an IT savvy crowd, perfect. They'll understand the report and they'll be able to get it. Maybe we're dealing with a crowd that maybe isn't as IT centric, but still kind of want to know what's going on. the report kind of caters to that view as well, because we're kind of presenting a lot of the data in a kind of, instead of a line by line, log by log, kind of in a graphic representation. It's kind of easier to understand, easier to digest, even for kind of the old kind of, the grizzly IT veterans out there. Kind of makes it easy on the eyes to be able to view that data that way. So with that, that's really kind of the overview here, kind of from A to Z. So, RapidScale team, definitely kind of take it away here, but we definitely have some time for some Q&A if there's any questions out there.
Yeah, so Dylan, I know there was something you wanted to add following the demo, and then I have a couple questions we can ask.
Absolutely. Yeah, and the audience is obviously going to be a bit diverse when it comes to technical knowledge. So that probably in some cases was way over some people's heads, and in some cases maybe you're able to relate to some or all of what was going on there. So let me get that slide back up. There we go. So the point there is, if this went way over your head, great, no problem. That's why we're here. That's why RapidScale is here, to bring the general security conversation with your partners or with your customers and prospects, understand what their needs are, what their vulnerabilities are, and be able to position products like AlienVault, not only to consult on it, but to also have the relationships where we can bring in the experts, whether that's on our team with the solutions engineering team or with AlienVault as well. If you could relate and understand some of this, then it probably was a good understanding that we can provide all the different levels and layers of security, and AlienVault's kind of the heart and core of all of those solutions when it really comes down to it. Again, you don't want people poking around inside your house without knowing what's going on. So, Summer, did we have any questions?
A couple that I wanted to ask. So this might be more aimed toward the AlienVault team, but is there any particular vertical that this technology can specifically target?
And I can get to that question. So as far as AlienVault and the way we deploy, because we are a cloud solution and an on-premise, and the way we structure our architecture by isolating log data and making sure it never leaves the network or is compromised in between customers or the service provider, we really can target all verticals with our technology, whether it's government, financial, healthcare, or retail. At the same time, we're giving you that capability not only to service their security needs, but also making sure that we can comply with any compliance reporting, audits, or anything else they need for compliance as well.
Perfect. And we actually just got another one in. Does AlienVault have a list of discovery questions that they can send over that we can provide as a resource partners?
Yeah, definitely. I can send that to you, send that to the RapidScale team. We also have a partner portal where we have some useful information there as well. So I can definitely circle back and pull something from there.
And I think we have some of those as well. So yeah, we'll work with you guys and make sure we've got a comprehensive list of those that we can share out.
Perfect. Final one I'm seeing is, who is responsible for remediation?
I will take that one because, yeah, sorry, Zarek, I'll take that just because it's going to vary. RapidScale in our normal model when it comes to our security services, again, and obviously specific to AlienVault, is that we're going to be the security operations center. We're going to be the first point of identification of whether that's identifying new devices that need to be added as an asset, warnings or events that need to be addressed, and we'll escalate accordingly. Now, depending on the services that the customer has subscribed to, the remediation may be different. If all we're doing really is providing this as a security service, and it's ultimately at a customer's premises, whether it's a remote office or it's some other data center, which we can absolutely support implementing the AlienVault and most of our security solutions on top of, then we will be ultimately a triage and escalation point, and then escalating that back to either a department within the IT group or an IT group or some primary contact. If the ultimate infrastructure is inside of the RapidScale environment and we're managing the operating system, we're managing the firewall, we're managing the different devices and solutions inside of that environment, then we are the escalation point and we will be responsible for remediation. And then I'll take that one step further and say that if there's a question around how quickly and what's the SLA for remediation, it's impossible to provide one because it just depends on exactly what the issue is. So our response will have an SLA, the remediation and resolution for any kind of ticket, whether it's security or otherwise, is just dependent on what the actual problem is.
Great.
Was that all the questions?
All right. Yeah, that's it from the question panel.
Awesome. Well, guys, thanks very much for hopping on from the AlienVault side. Thanks for condensing that down into a short period of time so we can give our partners some more time in their day back. For everybody else that's on the call, all the partners, thank you very much for having the attention span for 45 minutes to take a look at our AlienVault component of our security, cloud security solutions. And I hope you guys have a fantastic day. Don't forget, this will be recorded this was recorded, and it'll be available in the partner portal and via email for everybody that attended.
Awesome. Thank you, guys.